Have you ever found yourself engulfed in utter darkness, where light and order have completely vanished? Forget the street lights and artificial glow of today's world. In 14th century Europe, when the sun dipped below the horizon, the world did not merely sink into shadow, it transformed into an uncanny, predatory, and lawless realm. In that era, being caught outside the city walls after dark meant walking alone on the razor-thin line between life and death. As your knees buckled from sheer exhaustion and the biting frost seeped into your very bones, the only sanctuary you could hope to find were those smoky wooden inns looming by the roadside. Banish from your mind the merry, warm, and romantic taverns depicted in fairy tales and grand fables. A real medieval inn was less a glorious meeting place for heroes, and more a raw, brutal hub of pure survival. A place where the pungent stench of wood smoke, dry dung, stale ale, and heavy sweat mingled thickly in the air. The moment you step inside, you do not simply escape the freezing cold. You step into a long, agonizing night of high alert, surrounded by strangers, each ready to draw a blade at the slightest provocation. Now, surrender your mind to the autumn darkness of the 14th century, to that drenched road where relentless rain has turned the earth into thick, churning mud. The heavy cloak on your back is soaked through and weighed down with water. Your fingers are completely numb from the cold, and from somewhere in the distance comes the rhythmic, eerie creak of a wooden sign swinging in the wind. Tonight, you will take shelter in a medieval inn, and what awaits you the moment you cross that threshold will be infinitely harsher, darker, and more real than you ever dared to imagine. The march you have endured for hours grows heavier with every step through mud that sinks to your knees. In the autumn darkness of the 14th century, you are on one of the main roads connecting the kingdom. But this is no road in any ordinary sense. It is a wet expanse of mire turned into a lake by the rain, gouged by deep ruts carved by merchant wagons, riders, and travelers on foot. The fierce wind clatters the branches of stunted oak trees along the roadside, making a somber, eerie sound. The heavy woolen cloak draped over your shoulders no longer protects you from the cold. Instead, weighed down by the water it has soaked up, it has turned into a cold suit of armor clinging to your back. With every breath, the only thing filling your lungs is the sharp, burning scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Hours have passed since the sun set. In the Middle Ages, the fall of night means the world you know closes its doors. There are no street lamps along the road, nor any guard patrols to ensure your safety. You are far beyond the reach of city walls. Being alone in this darkness means risking becoming the target of a band of brigands leaping from the bushes at any moment, or a pack of hungry wolves watching you from the depths of the forest. You tightly grip the hilt of the simple dagger at your waist. Your fingers are nearly numb from the cold, your joints aching. You want to quicken your pace, but the mud refuses to let you. Every time your foot slips, your heart leaps into your throat. Just as you're about to lose hope, you hear a rhythmic creak cutting through the howling wind, the dry sound of metal grinding against wood. You lift your head and peer into the dark. A few hundred meters ahead, set right beside the road, the silhouette of a massive structure emerges. Low stone walls bound with mortar beneath an upper floor with a wooden roof. It is a wooden sign swaying in the wind, carved with the figure of a yellow boar's head that even illiterate travelers can understand. Through the building's small, iron-barred windows, you spot a faint, yellowish beam of light seeping out. This light is the sole sign of life reaching out to you in the midst of the dark. As you draw closer, you see that its roof is thatched with reeds, rainwater dripping continuously from the eaves into the muddy ground. You step toward the entrance. This is an inn, both a shelter for travelers and a gathering spot for locals. The wooden troughs where horses left outside are hitched gleam in the wetness. A few gaunt horses stand waiting, heads bowed, backs turned to the wind. As rain trickles down your face beneath the eaves, you approach the door. The door itself is a massive slab of gnarled pine timber, reinforced with thick iron bands. Your hand reaches for the iron door latch, slick with cold moisture. The latch is crude smithwork, leaving a freezing sensation in your palm. Gathering your strength, you press the latch down and push the heavy door inward with your body. The door slowly opens, grinding against the mud and pebbles collected beneath it. And in that very moment, the freezing cold outside gives way to an entirely different world. The instant you step inside, what hits your face first is not warmth, but a wave of thick, smoky, almost dense air. This air burns your throat with the first breath drawn into your lungs. The smell inside does not stem from a single source. It is a complex layer baked into these walls over the years. The pungent stench rising from wood smoke and dried dung blends into the steam of a stale stew simmering in the central stone hearth. The heavy dampness emanating from the wet wool clothing of dozens of travelers like you mingles with puddles of ale and sour wine pooled in the corners. You can even distinguish the sharp reek of animal waste and human sweat beneath the thin layer of straw spread across the ground floor. As you shut the door behind you, the noise seems to abate for a second, but the clamor of the hall swiftly returns. Your eyes adjust to the smoke and dimness. The ceiling is notably low. Solid timber beams are blackened like pitch from the smoke. What illuminates the hall is neither a bright chandelier nor a proper torch. Cheap tallow candles melting in iron dishes mounted on the walls cast feeble orange shadows. These candles yield little light while filling the space with a heavy, burnt animal fat stench. Though the smoke from the logs burning in the central stone hearth tries to escape through a crude hole in the roof, the wind forces most of it back inside, leaving a faint haze hanging suspended in the middle of the room. The floor is a slurry of stone and mud. With every step taken inward from the entrance, mire dragged in from outside spreads across the stones. To your right, you spot shadows seated at long, crude wooden tables. The clatter of wooden tankards thumping against wood, loudly sworn oaths, the bellow of a drunken traveler calling out to the innkeeper in a far corner for another mug of ale. As the door opened, the eyes of several men at the tables turned toward you. These glances are far from friendly. They are curious, ominous, and probing. Who are you? A merchant? A noble with a bulging coin purse? Or a fugitive without a single copper coin to your name? Water dripping from your soaked cloak falls onto the straw beneath your feet. You wipe the rainwater from your face with your sleeve. Though the warmth inside begins to touch your skin, it brings no true comfort. The atmosphere here is heavy, sinister, and packed with men. You are away from the perils of the dark road at last, but now you step forward to claim your place inside a medieval inn, among dozens of strangers, outlaws, and travelers who know nothing of one another. As water drips from your cloak to the floor, you head toward a relatively less smoky corner of the room, to a table a few meters from the hearth. You find a spot to settle at the empty end of a long table made of roughly hewn oak, darkened by grease and beer residue. The wooden bench is cold and hard. The creak it makes as you sit is enough to turn the glances of several people at the table directly toward you. Scanning the room, you spot a shadow approaching you through the smoky crowd. It is the innkeeper. His rough linen shirt is covered in dirt, grease, and old food scraps. A heavy wooden key ring hangs from the wide leather belt at his waist, alongside a small brass scale dangling from his neckband. There is no trace of hospitality on his face. Instead of greeting you, he looks first at the mud on your boots, then beneath your cloak, toward where he expects your pocket or coin purse to be. To a medieval innkeeper, an arriving traveler is not a guest. They are merely a temporary burden, worth only as much as the silver in their purse, and capable of fleeing or causing trouble at any moment. Something to eat and a place to sleep, or just keeping from freezing by the hearth, he asks. His voice is harsh, raspy from years of shouting. The bargaining begins right then and there, before you even sit down. You pull a few roughly minted coins from the leather pouch at your belt and drop them into the innkeeper's calloused, rough palm. As soon as he takes the coins, he holds them up to the candle on the wall. He bites one between his teeth to test its hardness, checking whether the edges have been clipped or if it is fake silver or a cheap copper alloy, then scratches the surface with his fingernail. Coins from various duchies, kingdoms, or free cities circulate in the region, and innkeepers set their own exchange rates. If your money seems insufficient, he could toss you right out the door. After gauging the coin's weight in his hand once or twice, he tosses them into his apron pocket with a satisfied, rough grunt. A few minutes later, food is set before you on a wooden tray. In an inn of this era, you can have no expectation of ceramic or porcelain plates. The plate for the meal is a thick slice cut from dried, hardened, whole-grain barley bread, a trencher. From the giant cast-iron cauldron simmering endlessly over the hearth, for days, perhaps weeks, the innkeeper ladles a generous helping of dark stew directly onto this bread. It is impossible to tell exactly what is in the stew. Whatever was thrown into the pot day by day has blended together. A few chunks of salted pork or mutton, plenty of parsnips, turnips, barley grains, and a heavy scent of garlic. The hard bread underneath slowly begins to absorb the broth from the steaming hot stew. You have no fork, as forks are not yet a known or used utensil in most of Europe during this era. You draw your own utility knife from your belt. Spearing the fibrous pieces of meat on the bread with the point of the blade, you cut them and pop them into your mouth with your fingers. The meat is tough, overly salty, and carries a strong, smoky flavor. The turnips remain slightly firm. Still, after hours in the cold, this hot meal spreads genuine warmth through your soaked and frozen body for the first time. You aren't looking for flavor. Your only goal is to dull the gnawing feeling in your stomach and overcome the exhaustion brought on by the cold. Beside the meal, served in a roughly carved wooden mug, is barley ale. This is no clear, golden, frothy beer. It is a cloudy, diluted, slightly sour liquid with sediment settled at the bottom. In the Middle Ages, river water was polluted and disease-ridden, making beer, brewed through boiling, the safest drink available. However, this house ale is likely a cheap concoction watered down by the innkeeper, infused with oak bark to prolong its shelf life. Even so, every sip washes away the lingering taste of dense wood smoke and salty meat from your throat. As you eat, you begin to observe the other travelers at the table and around you. At the far end of the long table sit two merchants, clad in fine furs that are now spattered with mud. They have wedged their leather saddlebags between their legs, whispering to each other as they pass a small silver balance back and forth. With every movement, their eyes dart toward you and the door. The anxiety of protecting their goods and silver is etched into every tense line on their faces. A bit further off, a man sits leaning against a sturdy wooden pillar, half his face covered by an old sword scar. Judging by his worn leather armor pieces and rusted scabbard, he's clearly a mercenary or a deserter from an army. He rhythmically taps the sheath of his dagger against the table with his finger. He speaks to no one, slowly sipping his ale. His eyes measure everyone in the room, one by one. On the other side of the table are local peasants. Their rough linen clothes are caked in mud, and dirt fills the crevices beneath their fingernails. They mutter among themselves, complaining about this year's drought, the heavy forced labor demanded by the Lord across the stream, and the crop tithes collected by the church. For them, this inn is the sole sanctuary where they can escape their daily misery and warm themselves with a few gulps of cheap ale. There is a complete clash of classes and origins at this table, yet an invisible, tense boundary is drawn between them. Everyone watches each other's hands, movements, and intentions. A wrong word or a sharp glance could transform the stillness of this smoky room into a brutal brawl in seconds. Resting your elbows on the greasy wooden table, you pull your cloak a little tighter around yourself, keeping your hand close to the hilt of the dagger at your belt. As you scrape the last morsel of food from the hard bread trencher, a thin, wavering voice rises from the dim corner right beside the hearth. A wandering bard attempts to tune his lute, its slackened strings fashioned from dried goat gut. The resonant sound echoing from the wooden casing briefly cuts through the heavy hum of the room. The song the bard sings is neither a cheerful courtly melody nor a heroic epic. It is a somber lament, telling of famine, the early frost of autumn, and the ruthless plague that has surfaced in a town a few days' journey away, darkening the skin of the afflicted. Along with the music, the whispers around the tables deepen, for in this era, an inn is not merely a place to eat. It is the sole hub where news, gossip, and information circulate through the air. Words spilling from the lips of the merchants at the adjacent table catch your ear. Bandit gangs holding the southern roads, tax collectors gathering outside the city walls, and the additional barley tax the Lord plans to exact from the villages for his new war preparations. A peasant slams his fist hard against the table and curses. Hatred and desperation are plain in his eyes as he recounts how the Lord's men seized the last of the seed wheat from the storehouse. Every piece of news gathered in this smoky room renders the gloom inside just a little heavier. As the night wears on, watered-down sour wine and heavy barley beer begin to thoroughly cloud minds. The silence at the long table toward the back of the establishment is shattered by the crack of a breaking wooden mug and coarse curses. Two drunken travelers stand face to face over loaded dice carved from bone, while one drags a few copper coins across the table to his side. The other slides his rusted blade from its sheath. The patrons at the surrounding tables immediately back away. In a place like this, a brawl can turn into a full-blown melee in seconds. A wooden stool shatters against the wall, the scent of spilled beer mingling with the metallic stench of fresh blood. Right at that moment, the innkeeper bursts through the crowd, wielding a heavy, roughly hewn oak club. His voice booms, harsh and authoritative enough to drown out the din of the brawl. "No blood shall be spilled over tables beneath this roof," he roars. According to the inn laws of the era, The innkeeper is held personally responsible before the local lord's magistrate for any theft or murder committed beneath his roof. A traveler being killed or robbed within the confines of the inn means heavy fines for the innkeeper, or even losing the right to operate the establishment. The innkeeper and his two burly helpers grab the drunken instigator by the scruff of his neck and drag him toward the door. The heavy door, reinforced with pine pegs, swings open, and the drunk is thrown out into the pitch-black rain and the wet mud. When the door slams shut again, the tension inside gives way once more to that smoky, restless hum. As for you, without taking your hand off your dagger for even a single moment, you watch everything unfold, realizing once again on what a fragile balance the night rests in this tavern. As the innkeeper hands you a feeble oil candle and nods toward the floor above, you rise from the table. Leaving the shouts below and the sound of the storm behind, you head toward the narrow, excessively steep wooden stairs at the back of the establishment. The steps are worn down by years of moisture, their centers bowed inward. Every creak of wood beneath your boots echoes through the dark upper story of the structure. As you ascend, the warmth from the downstairs hearth gives way to a freezing draft seeping through the gaps in the timber roof. At the end of the upper corridor, you push open a crude door held by a simple wooden latch and step into the communal bedchamber. This is no locked or private room of your own. In the 14th century, concepts like private property or personal privacy do not exist for an ordinary traveler. The stench that hits your face the moment you open the door is not smoke this time, but a heavy, sour air rising from the accumulated sweat, wet clothing, and damp straw of dozens of people lying packed shoulder to shoulder. The ceiling is so low that you are forced to walk hunched over. The cold wind whistling through the cracks where the wooden walls join threatens to snuff out the candle in your hand at any second. You make your way toward the straw mattresses scattered randomly across the floor, or stuffed into rough burlap sacks. You find the only vacant spot left on a pallet beneath a broken window shutter in the corner. The straw is neither fresh nor clean. It is a decaying, dusty pile slept on by thousands of travelers over months, having absorbed the dampness of countless wet cloaks. Laying down upon it, you feel the sharp stalks of straw poking through the thin felt casing, pressing against your back and right into your bones. Yet the true nightmare begins the moment you lower your body onto the straw. That straw is crawling with lice, bedbugs, and fleas, an inevitable reality of medieval lodging. Awakened by the warmth radiated by your body, these parasites begin crawling into the folds of your woolen clothes, down into your socks, and around your wrists within minutes. The sudden, sharp, unbearable itch breaking out across your legs, neck, and back easily overpowers the cold and the bone-deep fatigue. As the sting of the bite spreads over your skin, you hear the other occupants tossing restlessly, scratching furiously through their garments, and muttering curses through clenched teeth in the dark. It isn't just the vermin. The wheezing snoring of the foreign merchant on the pallet to your right, a deep hacking cough from the far corner of the room, and the skittering of mice hunting for scraps beneath the floorboards dominate the space. Pulling your cloak up to your chin to shield yourself from the drafting wind, you try to close your eyes on this bed overrun with lice and prickly straw. Yet your body and mind are unable to surrender to true sleep in the midst of this damp, restless nightmare. As the tallow candle, dying in its iron dish in the corner of the room, sinks into the dirty, congealed fat at its base, it sizzles out, leaving a thin layer of yellowish smoke. In that moment, it feels as if the very last ember of life drains from the room, and heavy darkness swallows the upper floor. It is a suffocating blindness. Even with your eyes wide open, raising your hand to your face reveals no fingers. With the light gone, the pressure on your senses multiplies, for in the dark, every whisper, every movement, and every breath sounds infinitely closer and far more threatening. You are directly beneath the timber roof, and as midnight approaches, the storm grows truly wild. Whistling wind pours inside, dislodging bits of mortar between the dried pine beams. Unable to withstand the pressure outside, the structure's massive wooden skeleton groans deeply like aching bones as it flexes. The freezing night air seeping through the gaps in the roof penetrates your wet cloak and chills you to the bone. Then, a completely different sound pierces the wild howling of the wind. The rhythmic, long, spine-chilling howl of a wolf pack echoing from the depths of the forest, feeling as though it is drawing nearer, step by step. To a person of the 14th century, this sound is not merely the presence of a predator. It is the threat of a dark world where civilization ends and nature and death hold absolute sway. Before long, from the stable on the ground floor or the open manger outside, you hear the frantic, raspy whinny of a horse crazed with fear, its hooves pounding against the muddy ground. Yet what truly sends your heart into your throat in this darkness is not the hungry wolves outside, but the strangers breathing side by side on the straw in this very room, whose faces you cannot even fully see. In the Middle Ages, the communal room of an inn is a realm where law and order remain entirely outside the door. There are no locks on the doors here. The wooden latch is purely symbolic. You cannot know whether the man lying to your right is truly a merchant or a highwayman disguised as one. Perhaps he is a fugitive, escaped from a town dungeon, driven mad by hunger, who would not hesitate to slit your throat for his next meal. The only way to survive the night unscathed is to stay vigilant. You remove the leather pouch from inside your jacket or belt. Holding the pouch tightly in your palm so the silver and copper coins inside do not clink together, you bury it amidst the wet, musty straw right beneath your head. Your right hand never leaves the underside of your cloak. Your fingers remain clamped around the cold, crudely crafted brass hilt of the dagger at your waist. The freezing touch of the metal numbs your fingertips, yet that coldness offers you the single sense of security to cling to. You ease the dagger half an inch from its sheath. Your wrist is primed to tense at the slightest movement in the dark. It is not just the fear of theft. Your own body grants you no peace. Hundreds of bedbugs and fleas bursting from the warming straw seep through the pores of your clothes and assault your skin. The unbearable burning itch breaking out on your wrists, neck, and waist drives your mind to the brink of madness. As you scratch, the dirt and straw dust gathering under your fingernails inflames the bites even further. You hear the others in the room violently yanking at their clothes in the dark, punching the straw and spewing coarse curses. Occasionally, you feel something wet and slippery pass right by your foot, a massive field mouse drawn to the food scraps beneath the straw. Just as your eyes begin to grow heavy with exhaustion, the mass of straw to your immediate left rustles and shifts. Someone has stood up. In the darkness, the footsteps move painfully slowly, as if listening for someone's breath. The sound draws near to the corner where you lie, right toward where your head rests. Your heart begins to pound as if it might shatter your rib cage. You hear the thumping pulse of your own blood in your temples. You hold your breath completely. You strain your lungs to keep your chest from rising and falling. Your right hand grips the dagger's hilt so tightly that your knuckles pop. In the dark, the footsteps stop directly above you. Seconds stretch into a century. You adjust your posture millimeter by millimeter so the cold steel doesn't slip in your sweaty palm. Will he make a move? Will he thrust his hand into the straw? Will he press a blade to your throat? Seconds later, the shadow coughs softly, leans against the wall right beside you, and bends toward the wooden barrel in the corner of the room to relieve himself. The moment you realize the movement was not meant for you, you quietly release the trapped air from your lungs. Yet this relief lasts only a few minutes. The night in this inn promises no true sleep. Even when your eyes close for a few minutes, your consciousness never fully fades. You remain trapped in a continuous nightmare, a half-awake vigil. The raspy, guttural cough of the man nearby, the storm battering the roof, the restlessness of the horses outside, and the burning sting of lice startle you upright again and again until morning. With every awakening, your immediate instinct is to slip your hand toward the pouch beneath your head and check if your dagger remains in its sheath. Until daylight leaks through the cracks of the windows, every minute in this smoky, ominous room unfolds as a fight for survival. As pale, leaden light begins to seep through the gaps where the roof's rough timber cladding meets the stone wall, the pitch darkness of the night slowly breaks. Another cold autumn morning of the 14th century emerges lifelessly beneath the inn's rafters. Opening your eyes, you feel as though your body has turned to stone. Your back muscles are knotted, and your joints ache from hours spent lying tense on the coarse straw, clutching the dagger at your waist. The bedbug bites on your neck and wrists remind you of their presence with a burning itch in the freezing morning chill. By reflex, you slip your hand under your head. The hardness of coins in your leather pouch meets your palm. You seat your dagger firmly into its sheath and push yourself up. The other travelers in the room wake one by one. The rustle of straw beneath slowly moving bodies is accompanied by groans from stiff necks, deep throat clearing, and raspy coughs. No one speaks. No one meets another's gaze. Everyone is preoccupied with gathering their belongings, driven by the quiet, primal relief of having survived the night. Wrapping your cloak tightly around your shoulders, you pull on your damp boots and descend the narrow, creaking wooden stairs to the ground floor. The lower level is no longer the boisterous, warm, and smoky room of last night. The great fire in the stone hearth has died out, leaving behind only the acrid smell of cold, damp ash lingering in the air. Remnants of spilled ale and wine from yesterday have hardened into sticky stains upon the flagstones. The air is bitterly cold. The innkeeper sits by the hearth, carving a dense loaf of barley bread with a large knife. His face remains unchanged from last night, weary, indifferent, and stern. Before you, he sets a hard piece of stale bread left over from the night before, and a wooden mug of cold, murky water. To quell the emptiness gnawing at your stomach since dawn, you bite hard into the loaf. The bran-heavy, tough crust tests your teeth, but as you chew, the yeasty flavor spreading through your mouth brings a faint return of strength. After eating, It is time to settle the bill. You step toward the innkeeper. A final tally is drawn for the filthy straw bed, the sour ale, the salty stew, and this stale morning bread. Tracing invisible figures onto the table with his calloused fingers, he names his price. You take the last bit of copper or silver from your pouch and drop it into his palm. The man bites the coin to test its metal, scrapes it with a fingernail, and quietly slips it into his apron pocket. No farewells or well wishes are exchanged. Your presence in this inn lasted only as long as your coin. Tightening the clasp of your cloak, you walk toward the heavy pine door. As you lift the coarse iron latch and push forward with your body, what strikes your face is not yesterday's smoky heat, but the damp, sharp morning frost outside. You step outside. The rain has stopped, but the sky remains smothered in heavy, leaden clouds. A thick morning fog envelops the surroundings, obscuring all vision. Last night's storm has turned the road into a sea of mud, with deep ruts left by merchant wagons brimming with water. Water dripping from the inn's eaves splashes rhythmically into the mire. Behind you, the heavy door closes with a creak and a dull thud. The scent of smoke, ale, and straw is left behind. Pulling up the collar of your cloak, you turn your back to the wind. Before you lies a muddy road vanishing into the mist, treacherous forests, and an uncertain next sanctuary. As your boots sink into the sludge, a traveler who survived another precarious medieval night, you press onward into the dark road ahead.